Kayla, two big rappers have come out recently, have their first MMA fights in Gary Tana and Dylan Dennis. Both very different approaches to the first fight.
Yeah.
Dylan kind of stuck to his strengths where
Yeah.
Gary almost ignored them and won a striking fight.
Yeah.
Watching this, did that give you any info on how you should take it on, or did that, anything on that side?
Well, I just think the one big difference between me and those two guys is jiu-jitsu is a lot more solely ground-based. I'm not sure exactly how great their takedowns were. I've never actually worked out with either one of them, but no, it definitely gave me something to look at, something to see. I definitely want to be exciting. I want to make sure people want to tune in to watch, so I don't know if it's going to be striking or grappling or I don't know. It's going to be something crazy.
Quick question. Nat Wilkins with Brooklyn Fights.
Sorry, I hear the national anthem. Just a second. It's really throwing me off. Gotta be respectful. I feel like I'm back on top of the podium now. Okay, sorry, what was that?
All right, so your presence here tonight obviously signifies something with PFL's intent with women. Tell me about what you expect to happen in terms of women coming on the league in future seasons.
Yeah, well, you know, unfortunately, because of the big undertaking that the PFL is in the middle of, you know, trying to make the sport a regular season, postseason championship, having all the men's weight classes, I think trying to build a women's division was just a little bit too much. It was just one too many things. So this year it's just going to be me and my weight class and a couple of random fights. But I fully expect by next year they're going to have a women's weight class and we're going to have $1 million to fight for.
How do you feel about more broadly women's opportunities in MMA, say, compared to other combat sports like boxing, for example?
Oh, I think it's amazing. I think women's MMA is probably the fastest growing sport in the world right now. You know, I'm not sure MMA in general is one of the fastest growing sports, but it's especially for women. You know, girls are, every day, young girls are waking up and realizing they don't want to play with Barbie dolls, they want to learn how to kick things. So I think it's awesome.
Right on. Thank you.
When do you think you will make your debut?
I fight June 21st in Chicago for the PFL 2.
And you're not going to be part of, it's not going to be part of any season?
Well, it's going to be during this season, but just not in the tournament format. So I'm just going to be fighting random chicks.
Are you concerned at all? Because, you know, the women's featherweight division, for example, in the UFC has been hard to build, as well as in other, promotions as well. Is there any concerns of perhaps, you know,
I think if you build it, they will come, you know. I think it's just, it's unfortunate that women's MMA is much further behind than the men's. You know, they've got quite a jump on us in terms of how long they've been around, but I think you just got to give it a matter of time. Listen, I know probably 50 judo girls who weigh about the same as me who would be killers in MMA. So bring the money, bring some spotlight, give it some time, and it'll be there.
Kayla, Xavier Porter, BrooklynFights.com. Can you share what goes through your mind with the preparation for your upcoming fight?
What goes through my mind? Oh, well, about, 30,000 things throughout the day. Am I eating enough? Am I sleeping enough? Am I rested? Should I be training more? Should I be training less? How am I going to do? What's it feel like to get punched in the face for real? A million different things. But really, I'm fortunate that I've competed at the highest level of sport. I've had that pressure. I've had the pressure of winning an Olympics and then going back to defend it. So, I practice a lot of positivity, positive thinking, motivational thoughts. Every night I picture myself, going out and beating the crap out of Brittany Elkin. I'm just taking it one day at a time, one practice at a time, 1 minute at a time. Just trying to enjoy the journey. But I am a psychopath, so.
Kayla, Keith Shaw on the MMA Takeover. You already mentioned that you're Olympic gold medalist, two-time Olympic gold medalist.
That's right.
One in American history for females. You've already risen to the highest level in a sport. I mean, you're a hero to so many people, young girls.
Thank you.
A lot of times when someone reaches the highest level, they call it a day, or they become a coach, or they open up their own judo studio. Why do you want to fight?
Well, it's no secret that after the Olympics in Rio, I spent some time doing a lot of soul searching. I was definitely depressed, I think you could say, when you wake up every day for 20 years and you have one goal, and then all of a sudden, August 12th rolls around and you don't have that goal anymore. It's a really scary thought for a type A person like me, to wake up and not have something to strive towards. So I knew that I was done with judo. I was completely burnt out. I had accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish twice. But I wasn't quite sure I was done athletically. And I don't know what it is about me, but there's this thing inside me where I have to prove to everyone that I'm the best there ever was, or I'm going to be the greatest, or I'm going to prove to everyone that, that girl doesn't mean anything. So I started training and started going to practice and started sparring about a month after I went to my first striking class, and I love it, I always thought judo was a real test of a person's will, but, take a gi off, put some gloves on you, throw you in a cage and lock the door, and that's a real test.
So Kayla, obviously, when you bring up your name, there's a comparison to another woman.
Yeah, I know.
A young, blonde, Olympic judoist.
She's not as young as me.
Okay.
Or as blonde as me.
And not as accomplished in judo as you. Obviously, Ronda Rousey, biggest star ever in women's MMA.
Yeah.
You haven't even fought yet, and already this comparison. I'm doing it myself right now.
Of course, you can't help it.
Do you believe that that's fair, and to put that kind of pressure on you already without even fighting?
Pressure? I mean, listen, I was Ronda's teammate. We were roommates. I grew up wanting to beat her. I always tell my coach, Big Jim, I feel like I have a Ronda complex. Anything she can do, I can do better, and I have to go prove it. So you guys aren't doing anything by bringing her up. I already have all these thoughts in my head. Don't worry. But she, at the end of the day, she opened a door for women like me, especially for judoka. I mean, I never thought about women's MMA before Ronda went and did what she did. So I'm grateful and thankful for that.
So Mr. Sefo and Mr. Silva, they spoke this week. They already mentioned that the second season they plan on doing a women's division, specifically 145, and they talked about you being in it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you come from a judo background. You do these tournaments all the time. You feel like that fits you perfectly?
Yeah, absolutely. I come from, like you said, judo, where it's I fought pretty much almost 15 times a year sometimes, and I fought, this weekend Poland, and the next weekend Kazakhstan, and the next weekend Germany, and then, do a 3-week training camp, and then you're home for a week, and then you're back over in Japan, and then China, and then Korea. So I'm used to the grind, and I'm used to constantly competing, and I feel like for me, that brings out the best. Success breeds success, and I like to get the ball rolling. I like to fight. So I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be better for me personally, but also just for fighters. You get to choose your own destiny. It's not about how much trash you talk. It's not about, how pretty you are. It's not about who is. It's me. That's awkward.
I'll tell you off for it.
Thanks. It's the fighters get to make their own destiny. So what's not to love about that?
When you signed, which originally was World Series Fighting, now PFL, obviously there's other organizations, big organizations. Why did you decide to go with the PFL?
At the time, it was November of 2016, so we're just a couple months out of the Olympics. I'm still not entirely sure if MMA is what I wanted to do. I hadn't even started striking yet. And at the time, WSOF really said to me, listen, we're going to give you 2 contracts. If you want to fight, that's great. We'll support that. But if you don't, here, why don't you come commentate for us? Why don't you be a brand ambassador? Why don't you get into the fight world and see if you like it? And we'll support you, and we'll see how you feel about that. So they took a leap of faith. They didn't know if I was going to say, screw that other contract, I'm never going to fight, or yes, this is what I want to do. And they were willing to work with me. Some of the other big organizations that I talked to wanted to say, no, this is what you're going to do, and you're going to do it by the end of the year, or you're going to do it by, February. And I was like, it's not realistic. So I'm really glad that I signed with WSOF, now PFL. I feel like it's the right place for me.
And all that other stuff you talk about, commentating, interviews, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still gonna be able to do that stuff, or just strictly?
Yeah, well, obviously they haven't had a fight since November of last year because they've been reorganizing as the PFL, so I haven't done any commentating. But once my fight in Chicago is over, I'm gonna do a couple shows with them as a commentator, and keep getting my feet wet there.
You mentioned that you sort of had a Ronda Rousey complex, in the judo world, and you're very competitive about that. Is that something that translates into MMA? Are you trying to perhaps surpass her achievements or get?
At this point in my life, it has nothing to do with Ronda. I want to be the best at everything I do. It has. when I was 16, did I want my coaches to pay attention to me because they were all watching Rhonda? Yeah, but now I'm grown up and I got my own shiny gold medals and I don't need to prove anything to anyone but myself, and I want to be one of the best MMA fighters there ever was. I want people to talk about me forever.
Yeah, and you just mentioned that sort of after your judo career, you were a bit depressed because there was nothing else for you. Has MMA relieved that?
Absolutely.
Depression?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, it's just like that. My type of personality, having a goal, having something to look forward to, having a purpose every day when I wake up is, it's important for me. And I have other outlets. It's not just fighting. I wrote a book and I have a foundation, and there's a lot of things that I do outside of fighting, but I just wasn't ready to be done with my athletic career. I feel like I still have something left in the tank.
How much do you think you have left? How many years in the sport?
I mean, I don't want to put a number on it. Let's knock on wood. Hopefully a long time, but I don't know. I told you, my goal is to be the best. So when I achieve that, then maybe I'll say, okay, I'm done with fighting.
What would you consider, aside from winning your first fight, what would be a success for you to come out of that fight, besides a victory?
I don't know. I guess I just want to get the world buzzing. There's a new kid in town, new kid on the block.
Do you feel there's a need, it's Olympic pressure, gold medal, that's a whole separate world. But now
Yeah.
you're kind of going to be sort of the face of the person who's going to take a women's division of the PFL.
Yeah.
Is there a burden there for you on that? Does it compare? How would it even compare to Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of pressure. Everyone's talking about, obviously, am I going to be the next big thing? Or, I have 2 Olympic gold medals. What does this mean? So there's a little bit of pressure, but it's nothing compared to what I put on myself internally. I'm my biggest critic. I'm my biggest pressure. So I don't really think about all that outside noise. I just try and focus on being the best Kayla I can be. I don't know. I think it's exciting. I usually thrive under the lights. I like pressure. That's what I got used to after fighting for 10 years, at the highest level of sport. That's what becomes your normal. I actually feel worse not fighting. Like, I don't like being normal. Who wants to be normal, I want to be special.
Tell us about your foundation.
Yeah, so I started the Fearless Foundation in 2012, shortly after I won my first gold medal. It's no secret that I was sexually abused by my first judo coach. And when I was 16, I told my mom that had been happening. I moved to Boston to train with the Pedros, who were my coaches from then until now. They're still my coaches. They're still in my corner. But I didn't start sharing my story publicly until right before the 2012 Olympics, right around when the Jerry Sandusky scandal started happening and breaking out. And I actually got in a fight with my best friend about it because she was complaining about Joe Paterno losing his job, but no one was there were kids at Penn State rioting and flipping over cars about a football coach losing his job, but nobody was talking about the countless victims whose lives had been changed forever. And I realized that that's because it doesn't have a face. People they don't think sexual abuse happens to them, or that it happens in Boy Scouts, but it doesn't happen to me, or it happens in the Catholic Church, but I'm not Catholic. But 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused or assaulted in some way by the time they're 18. So it does happen. It happens to all of us, and chances are I'm not the only person in this room that it's happened to. And after you win the Olympics, you get this great, amazing platform. Most Olympians get all of these calls and endorsements, will you represent my brand? Will you do this? Will you come to this party? Will you do that? And I just remember getting phone call after phone call. Will you come speak to my daughter's school? Will you come speak to this charity? Will you come speak to this organization? Something similar happened to my son. Can you help me talk to him? What do I say? How do I help? And so I decided to start the Fearless Foundation because all of these organizations, all these groups that I was speaking to were amazing, but I noticed that they're all a very local and regional level. There's no Live Strong, there's no Susan G. Komen, there's no big organization for survivors of sexual abuse. And I wanted to change that. So the goal of the Fearless Foundation is the first step is education. So I wrote a book. It's called Fighting Back. It's available on Amazon. And it's not a memoir, and it's not a textbook. It's sort of a guide for caretakers, teachers, doctors, parents, anyone who's around kids, and also young kids themselves. The reason the book is unique is it uses my experience, my story, as this is what grooming looks like. This is what it looks like to be in the silence. But it also I have a co-author, 2 co-authors, 2 psychiatrists from McLean Hospital. So I have diary entries from the time I was 10 years old. I wrote in a diary that whole time. So we use my story, and then they explain what's happening, and you sort of get an inside look of what sexual abuse is, child sexual abuse is, and how we can prevent it, and then also, you know, help survivors start to recover.
Where did you find the strength to, like you said, you were sexually abused by your first judo coach.
Mm-hmm.
That was a male, I'm assuming, correct?
Yes.
And your next judo coach was another male.
Yes.
How did you find the strength to transition from that coach to the next coach? Like, where, you know, the comfortability to train with another male?
Yeah, I think, you know, I always credit being able to overcome something like that. Obviously, you have to have something inside of you that wants to go on, but, you know, it's also, I was very, very fortunate about the people that I was surrounded with once the abuse happened. You know, my mom made a really tough decision. She moved me to Boston, you know, 800 miles away from all of my family and friends. My new coaches were pretty much the complete opposite of my first coach. You know, I trusted them as much as I trusted Daniel, but the Pedros are just, not only are they amazing coaches, they're just amazing people, and they had confidence in me, and they built me back up and made me believe in myself when nobody else did.
Okay, one more guy, sorry.
You mentioned commentating earlier. What have you learned from doing that, and how do you use that to your advantage? For
Yeah, well,
training and
sitting
fighting?
cage side and watching someone get their face punched in really gives you like a very clear view of what it's going to be like to be in there. So aside from sparring, I feel like it's really helped me learn the sport at a much faster pace and be able to see things that maybe I don't get to see in training or don't get to see in sparring. So, you know, I watch all the fights. I try and watch even when I'm not commentating, and it helps. You know, I'm a student of the game at this point. So.
Okay, sorry, this will be the last one.